Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves drifting into a forest that isn't quite awake and isn't quite asleep either. You can almost feel the air thickening as you step beneath the canopy. Warm, damp, scented with sap and leaves and something faintly sweet, like a pot of honey left too close to the sun. You move slowly, mostly because the vines keep trying to snatch your ankles, but also because you're pretty sure the forest is watching you. And honestly, if this keeps up, you probably won't survive this. But hey, that's just part of the charm of ancient Maya beekeeping at night, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And go ahead and tell me your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing where this little sleepy caravan wanders every night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push deeper into the forest, and the first thing you notice is the hush. It's not that nothing is making sound. There are frogs, distant night insects, a breeze brushing through the trees, but something about it feels padded, like the forest wrapped everything in felt just to keep the secrets from spilling. You pause near a cluster of tall trunks, and there it is, a faint, vibrating pulse, not a buzz exactly, more like the gentle tremor of a phone on low power mode. It's so subtle, you almost miss it. Almost. These are the Melipona beechi guardians, stingless bees the ancient Maya treated with the kind of respect most people reserve for celebrities or moody cats. Their hives sit hidden inside hollowed logs called jobones, wedged high enough to frustrate you but low enough that the original keepers could reach them with a little hop and a muttered prayer. You tilt your head, listening. The sound feels less like insects and more like a secret being whispered in slow motion. You reach forward, brushing your fingers over rough bark, and you can imagine a beekeeper from 15 centuries ago doing the same thing, checking the hive's mood before he dared open it. That's your first mainstream historical fact for the night. Maya beekeeping was already well established long before the Spanish ever showed up, and Melipona honey was a valued household medicine, offering everything from wound care to digestive comfort. Even now, people describe the honey's texture as almost syrupy, slightly medicinal, with a tang that hits the back of your throat like a polite reminder to behave yourself. You step sideways, listening again. The forest responds with another hush. There's a reason those ancient keepers trusted silent stingless hives, not just because they were easier to handle, though they definitely were, but because silence itself felt like a sign of balance. Loud bees, big stress. Quiet bees, good omens, stable seasons, maybe even a good harvest. That was the vibe. You crouch lower as you imagine a beekeeper kneeling just as you are, his hands steady, his breath measured. Historians still argue whether the Maya viewed these hives more as agricultural tools or as spiritual partners. But honestly, when you feel that low vibration against your palm, it's hard not to think it's a bit of both. The air tastes earthy, maybe a touch humid, the kind that makes your hair frizz immediately. You run your fingers once more across the bark, slowly, carefully, because you've already been warned that the bees may be stingless, but they will absolutely chew on your skin if you make them mad. And they commit to it with the passion of someone trying to unsubscribe from a newsletter but clicking the wrong button repeatedly. A sudden movement catches your eye. A flicker of something small and dark, zipping past your cheek like a tiny, caffeine-addicted commuter. You blink, then chuckle quietly. That was your first Melipona scout of the night, probably wondering why you're breathing so loudly. You try to inhale more softly, which, surprise, only makes you inhale louder. Classic. Still, you stay here, one hand on the trunk, listening to that hum. It's softer than electricity, lighter than rain, and steadier than your sleep schedule. You ease closer to another hollowed log strapped between two posts, its ends covered with clay plugs. Some ancient keepers pressed their fingerprints into those plugs, leaving tiny whorls that survived centuries. That's your quirky tidbit. Some researchers believe those prints acted as a personal hive signature, so everyone knew whose honey was whose without needing to strap a name tag onto a bee. You shift your stance again, and the forest creaks around you. An owl croaks far above. The chobon under your hand settles, as if sighing in its wooden sleep. And you imagine the keepers slipping between trees, moving with deliberate quiet. Not out of superstition, though superstition was definitely part of it, but because quiet meant the bees felt safe, and safe bees meant full honeypots. You, however, step on a twig so loudly you're sure someone 3 villages over heard it. Nice going. You pause, then glance up at the stars blinking between branches. The Maya read those too. Navigation, seasons, stories mapped across the sky. But here in this tiny clearing, lit by moon shards and your own awkward shuffling, everything funnels back to one point, the hum of the hive, the stillness, the signature calm that kept generations of beekeepers loyal to these gentle insects. Your eyes adjust further, and now you see more hobones, short sections of logs strapped horizontally, each one housing a microcosm of life. Some are older, their wood softened from time and humidity. Others look newly installed, smooth with fresh cuts. You imagine the handwork, the carving, the careful extraction of a colony from a wild nest, a process so intricate that modern beekeepers still struggle to replicate it without losing half the bees along the way. And here you are, brushing your hand over the outside like it's some kind of rustic vending machine. You breathe in once more, slower this time. A mosquito immediately decides you are his soulmate. You swat half-heartedly, muttering something that would probably get bleeped on daytime television. But even that small annoyance can't break the strange serenity pressing in around you. The Maya saw nature as a web of relationships. Soil, plants, animals, spirits, people, all woven together like a cosmic tapestry. Beekeeping wasn't merely a job, it was a partnership, a small but potent corner of that larger network. And standing here, surrounded by the hush of the forest and the slow, patient bees, you feel that truth like a soft weight on your shoulders. Not unpleasant, just grounding. The hum deepens, or maybe you're just hearing it better now that your brain finally slowed down. You step closer, leaning in. The chobon seems warm, like a sleeping animal. You imagine the cluster of bees within, thousands of bodies generating heat, their tiny feet tapping and brushing as they build wax pots and store honey in delicate chambers. And you picture the keeper lifting one of those plugs, peering inside with reverence, not greed. The moon slides out from behind a cloud, its light skimming over your hands, and for a moment you swear the hum feels like it's syncing with your breath, steady, soft, methodical. You relax. Your shoulders drop. Maybe this is why the keepers trusted the silence. It teaches you how to shut up and pay attention. A rare skill. You stay like this for a while, just listening, just breathing, just feeling the presence of the bees in their wooden homes. You sense the balance the keepers felt, the delicate line between tending and intruding, guiding and letting be. and without needing to think about it, your fingers trace a faint pattern across the surface of the log, almost as if greeting whatever tiny guardian spirit the myths whisper about. Because even if the scholars are still arguing about the spiritual significance, and even if you know logically that bees don't care about your emotional life, there's a part of you that can't help but sense something alive and aware inside that hollowed trunk. The hum softens again. You straighten, step back, and the clearing seems to exhale around you. The forest feels deeper than before, older, more deliberate. And without planning it, you find yourself moving toward the next hive, ready to discover what else this quiet corner of the Maya world is willing to show you. You move deeper between the trees, following a faint trail worn so gently into the earth that it feels less like a path and more like a suggestion. The jawbones you've been admiring weren't always quiet wooden cylinders hanging politely between stakes. They started as full trunks, thick and unruly, and someone had to carve them by hand. Someone like you, apparently, because the forest seems determined to guide you toward a half-finished log resting near a cluster of stones. You stop beside it. The trunk's been cut down to a length just shy of your arm, spread wide. The bark is rough, flaking at the edges, dotted with sap that glows amber under the moonlight. You kneel, running your fingers along the fissures, and for a moment you imagine the ancient keeper who felled this tree, not with steel, but with stone tools that required patience bordering on supernatural grace. You brush away leaves and ease your hands to the hollowed interior. The space inside is dark, cool, and surprisingly smooth. You inhale. The log smells like earth, resin, and distant rain. And as you trace slow circles along the inner curve, you can almost hear the lesson the log whispers: slow down. Because carving a jawbone isn't the kind of task you power through. It's not a throw on some music and speed run a weekend project situation. No, you need steady hands, measured strokes, and a tolerance for the kind of repetitive motion that could make even a monk sigh. The keepers carved with patience because the bees would later live with patience, and the log remembered every gesture that shaped it. You shift your weight and sit fully beside the trunk. Somewhere above you, a nightbird calls, low, almost apologetic. The forest hum you heard earlier has faded into the background, replaced by the hollow quiet of this half-made hive. You stop the rim with your knuckle. The sound is soft, wooden, promising, like a drum waiting for its skin. You imagine the ancient process, taking a chunk of trunk, clearing the heartwood with a combination of chipping, scraping, and the occasional prayer whispered under one's breath when a tool slipped or a knot refused to cooperate. Here comes your mainstream historical fact. Jawbones were traditionally carved from durable woods like habin or tsalam, chosen not only for strength, but for how well they kept the hive interior stable in humidity. The keepers knew their materials intimately. They weren't picking at random. In the Maya world, wood wasn't just wood. It carried personality, temperament, suitability. You run your palm along the inside again. It's cool, smooth, and almost bowl-like. The curve hugs your fingers. You trace it slowly, as if coaxing the shape to reveal its final form. An ancient keeper might have spent days achieving this exact interior, wide enough for brood pots, deep enough for honey storage, small enough to protect against predators who would love nothing more than a midnight snack of bee larvae. You breathe out slowly and picture the next step, sealing one end with a wooden disc or clay plug, then leaving a small opening on the opposite face for the colony to enter. The hive becomes a miniature world, self-contained, protected, and carefully balanced.
kind of like you when you finally shut off notifications and decide the world can wait until morning. The forest shifts again, leaves brushing against each other like soft applause. You look down at your hands, noticing wood dust clinging to your fingers, even though you haven't done any real carving yet. It feels symbolic, like the trunk is marking you as a temporary apprentice. You accept it. You reach for one of the old tools lying nearby, a stone adze with a polished edge. Its handle is smooth from use, worn by hands far more practiced than yours. You give it a tentative swing. It thunks against the inner wall, sending a small puff of dust into the air. Immediately, you feel a ridiculous urge to cough dramatically, but you restrain yourself. No need to announce your incompetence to the bees who might soon move in. A mosquito finds your elbow, because of course it does. You swat harder than you intended, the adze nearly slipping. You mutter a quiet apology to the log. Patience, after all, is the entire theme of the evening. You raise the tool again, carve away a small sliver of wood, then smooth it with your thumb. The wood grain ripples like something alive. In the distance, you hear the hum of the nearest hive, steady, grounding. It reminds you that this quiet interior you're shaping will one day cradle a colony that thrives not through chaos, but through measured, deliberate movement. And that's when your quirky tidbit arrives like a whisper from the past. Some beekeepers carve tiny symbols inside the hive, never large, never elaborate, just a mark or two meant to teach the bees calmness. Whether bees can be influenced by interior decor is questionable, but the tradition existed. A carved spiral here, a simple zigzag there. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it was aspirational. Maybe someone just liked doodling. But those marks appear in archaeological finds often enough to make you wonder what quiet intentions they carried. You lower the adze again and carefully carve a tiny semicircle near the inner wall. Not a symbol exactly, more like a gesture. Something small enough that the bees won't care, but you'll remember. You blow the dust away gently. The motion feels right. As you keep carving, the moon leans farther across the sky, stretching a band of silver across your arms. You settle into a comfortable rhythm. Each motion slows your heart, steadies your breath. It's calming, almost hypnotic. You can see why the keepers trusted this part of the process. It forces you to adopt the bee's tempo, slow, methodical, unhurried. If you rush, you ruin the hive. If you stay steady, the hive becomes a sanctuary. After a while, your arms grow tired, pleasantly so. You set the tool down and stretch your fingers. The trunk rests quietly beside you, its hollow a dark oval waiting to be filled with life. You lean back against a tree, breathing deeply. The forest has softened even more. The air feels like warm velvet draped gently across your skin. The nearby hives hum faintly, their resonance weaving in and out of the night sounds. You close your eyes and let the rhythm settle over your thoughts. Then another sound startles you, a low, dragging rustle from behind the bushes. You freeze, your heartbeat kicks up, a silhouette shifts just a little too close for comfort. Your mind immediately cycles through every wild animal known to exist in this region. Great, perfect. This is when you get eaten because you tried to craft a bee house in the dark. You brace for something dramatic. A large iguana waddles into view. It pauses, you pause, you both stare, silently judging each other. Then it turns, offended by your existence, and disappears into the brush with all the dignity of a creature wearing scales and zero pants. You exhale. Patience, right? The forest is teaching you patience too, apparently. You return your attention to the trunk. The bees will only move into a hive that feels safe, stable temperature, stable space, stable keeper. and the Maya knew how crucial the construction was. They monitored moisture, airflow, and integrity of the seals. They even rotated jawbones occasionally, making sure the hive stayed balanced and the honeypots didn't slump to one side like tired furniture. Historians still argue whether the jabon design evolved purely through utilitarian knowledge or whether it was influenced by early cosmology. The idea of the hive as a microcosm of the universe, shaped in deliberate symmetry. Some researchers think the proportions reflect cosmic order, echoing the Maya emphasis on directional harmony. Others argue it's just because bees prefer specific cavity sizes and the keepers learned what worked. Both explanations feel true in their own way. You run your palm along the inside again. It's cool, smooth, and almost bowl-like. The curve hugs your fingers. You trace it slowly, as if coaxing the shape to reveal its final form. An ancient keeper might have spent days achieving this exact interior, wide enough for brood pots, deep enough for honey storage, small enough to protect against predators who would love nothing more than a midnight snack of bee larvae. You breathe out slowly and picture the next step, sealing one end with a wooden disc or clay plug, then leaving a small opening on the opposite face for the colony to enter. The hive becomes a miniature world, self-contained, protected, and carefully balanced. Kind of like you when you finally shut off notifications and decide the world can wait until morning.
You're still moving through the clearing, letting that soft hum settle into the back of your mind when you notice the air shift again. Just a tiny change, like the forest adjusting its blanket. You step toward another jabon perched between two wooden stakes. This one is smoother than the others, burnished by generations of hands. When you touch it, the vibration is different, gentler, lighter, almost amused. And that's when you start to understand why ancient Maya beekeepers placed such unshakable trust in these bees. Melipona colonies don't just stay calm, they radiate calm, like tiny six-legged yoba structures with impeccable boundaries. You tilt your head closer until your cheek nearly rests against the warm bark. The hum is steady, smooth, like a sound wave designed by an overworked sleep app engineer who got too invested in achieving the perfect, tranquil forest drone setting. It doesn't surge like that sharp buzzing you get from honeybees. It's consistent, peaceful, like if someone turned bee anxiety down to zero. A small worker bee slips through a narrow entrance slit and hovers in front of your face, staring at you with the unblinking intensity of someone trying to decide if you're a threat or just deeply confused. You hold still. It zips around your eyebrow, considers your existence, then flies off with the weary energy of a librarian shelving books on a busy day. You exhale gently. You can see why keepers prize this serenity. With no stingers to weaponize, Melipona bees rely on their calm coordination. Their colonies stay stable, predictable, easy to work with, assuming you don't act like a caffeinated toddler. You run your thumb along the surface of the hive again, and it strikes you how much trust the keepers placed in this tiny species. This is where your mainstream historical fact sneaks in. The Maya didn't just gather honey incidentally. They built entire traditions around Melipona culture, using the bees for medicine, trade, offerings, and even diplomatic gifts. Royalty received honey, healers relied on it, and elders stored it like treasure. These bees weren't a hobby, they were an institution. You imagine an ancient keeper stepping into the same clearing, with the same moonlight filtering through leaves, the same hum rising in waves, and reaching for this very hive with hands steadier than yours. He'd know the colony's temperament before he even touched it. Some keepers claimed they could sense a hive's health from meters away, just from the tone of its hum, like the hive was playing an emotional soundtrack. And honestly, listening closely, you get it. This one hums like it's having a good day, or at least a neutral one, which in bee terms is practically festive. A faint breeze slips past your shoulder, and with it comes the sweetness of honeypots maturing inside the hollow log.
Melipona honey has a scent you don't find anywhere else. Tangy, floral, a little fermented. Some say it smells like a citrus flower daydreaming about becoming wine. Others say it smells like a fruit tree telling you secrets. You don't know which description is more accurate, but both feel right when the scent curls around your nose. You lean in again, and the forest seems to hush for you. It's almost theatrical, like the trees themselves are holding their breath to help you listen. A pair of crickets off to the left resume their argument at half volume. The bees inside the hive continue their soft vibration, and you start noticing a pattern, tiny fluctuations you wouldn't have caught earlier. Maybe the keepers weren't imagining the emotional soundtrack after all. The hum shifts with temperature, with nectar loads, with brood health, with colony mood. You're basically eavesdropping on an ancient wellness check. You take a slow step to the side, noticing the handcrafted plug sealing the hive's entrance. It's made of a clay and resin mixture that feels cool under your fingertips. You picture the keeper forming it, pressing it into place, leaving behind faint thumb marks. Your quirky tidbit arrives right on cue. Some keepers added crushed herbs to those plugs, claiming it kept the hive calmer and sweeter. Not sweet like honey, but sweet like personality. Whether that worked chemically or just charmed the bees with aromatherapy is still anybody's guess. You breathe in again, and this time you catch a faint tang of propolis, the sticky resin bees collect from tree bark. It's been used for everything from wound treatment to sealing pottery. The ancient keepers used it to waterproof instruments, patch containers, and occasionally, as one very old fringe story insists, to treat toothaches by politely shoving a tiny piece against the offending molar. You wince just imagining it, but hey, desperate times, desperate populace. Another worker emerges from the hive entrance. This one bumps your wrist as it climbs onto your skin. Its tiny feet tickle like the soft tap of a pencil eraser. You fight the urge to laugh. The bee walks a slow circle, decides you're sufficiently uninteresting, and flies off. Congratulations, you've passed the vibe check. You look around the clearing again, letting your eyes adjust. More hives, more quiet. The forest glows with a kind of hush that feels staged for your benefit, like a museum exhibit waiting for you to notice the plaque. You stand there, trying to decide what it feels like to be entrusted with this silence. It's not reverence exactly, more like cooperation. You keep quiet, and the bees keep calm. You stay gentle, and they stay predictable. You relax, and suddenly the whole forest seems to sync with your breathing. Not bad for a place where insects technically outnumber you a few thousand to one. You picture the ancient keepers again. Lean bodies, practiced motions, simple tools fashioned from bone and wood. They didn't rush the bees. They didn't barge into the hive. They waited. Sometimes hours, sometimes days. The Melipona colonies responded best to patience, and the keepers adapted. That's the heart of the trust. Stillness, slow hands, soft voices, a kind of mutual understanding that yelling and slamming things was absolutely not the vibe. A soft rustle catches your attention. Something moves in the underbrush, probably a lizard or maybe a nocturnal rodent out on a snack run. You freeze anyway because your brain is programmed to imagine jaguars when anything rustles in a Maya forest after dark. A moment passes. Nothing leaps at you. You relax again, but only slightly because a second rustle followed the first and you realize it was just your own foot brushing a leaf. Smooth. Historians still argue whether the Maya interpreted the bee's gentle nature as a symbolic contrast to the harsher, more dangerous species in the region. Some think it embodied a kind of spiritual purity. Others argue it simply made harvesting easier and more predictable, which, in fairness, makes total sense. You can imagine a keeper stepping into this same clearing, with the same moonlight filtering through leaves, the same hum rising in waves, and reaching for this very hive with hands steadier than yours. He'd know the colony's temperament before he even touched it. Some keepers claimed they could sense a hive's health from meters away, just from the tone of its hum, like the hive was playing an emotional soundtrack. And honestly, listening closely, you get it. This one hums like it's having a good day. Or at least the neutral one, which in bee terms is practically festive. A faint breeze slips past your shoulder, and with it comes the sweetness of honeypots maturing inside the hollow log. Melipona honey has a scent you don't find anywhere else. Tangy, floral, a little fermented. Some say it smells like a citrus flower daydreaming about becoming wine. Others say it smells like a fruit tree telling you secrets. You don't know which description is more accurate, but both feel right when the scent curls around your nose. You lean in again, and the forest seems to hush for you. It's almost theatrical, like the trees themselves are holding their breath to help you listen. A pair of crickets off to the left resume their argument at half volume. The bees inside the hive continue their soft vibration, and you start noticing a pattern, tiny fluctuations you wouldn't have caught earlier. Maybe beekeepers weren't imagining the emotional soundtrack after all. The hum shifts with temperature, with nectar loads, with brood health, with colony mood. You're basically eavesdropping on an ancient wellness check. You take a slow step to the side, noticing the handcrafted plug sealing the hive's entrance. It's made of a clay and resin mixture that feels cool under your fingertips. You picture the keeper forming it, pressing it into place, leaving behind faint thumb marks. Your quirky tidbit arrives right on cue. Some keepers added crushed herbs to those plugs, claiming it kept the hive calmer and sweeter. Not sweet like honey, but sweet like personality. Whether that worked chemically or just charmed the bees with aromatherapy is still anybody's guess. You breathe in again, and this time you catch a faint tang of propolis, the sticky resin bees collect from tree bark. It's been used for everything from wound treatment to sealing pottery. The ancient keepers used it to waterproof instruments, patch containers, and occasionally, as one very old fringe story insists, to treat toothaches by politely shoving a tiny piece against the offending molar. You wince just imagining it, but hey, desperate times, desperate propolis. Another worker emerges from the hive entrance. This one bumps your wrist as it climbs onto your skin. Its tiny feet tickle like the soft tap of a pencil eraser. You fight the urge to laugh. The bee walks a slow circle, decides you're sufficiently uninteresting, and flies off. Congratulations, you've passed the vibe check. You look around the clearing again, letting your eyes adjust. More hives, more quiet. The forest glows with a kind of hush that feels staged for your benefit, like a museum exhibit waiting for you to notice the plaque. You stand there, trying to decide what it feels like to be entrusted with this silence. It's not reverence exactly, more like cooperation. You wake the next morning, before the charcoal gray sky has fully softened, feeling the quiet weight of dew long before you see it. Your knees complain as you rise, but you ignore them. The garden listens only to what you do next. You slip outside, where the air is cool enough to bite your lungs, and the moss stretches before you like a patient congregation awaiting its sermon. You kneel beside the northern mound first, brushing your fingertip over the faintest roughness, a sign of a creeping dryness that arrived in the night. It is nothing urgent, but you acknowledge it, the way one bows in passing to a neighbor who will surely need help next week. Your wooden ladle rests in its customary basin of collected night rain. You lift it and trickle water, as though pouring medicine into the mouth of a sleeping child. The moss absorbs it with the quiet enthusiasm of something that never hurries but always accepts. You withdraw your hand to listen to the new sound of the garden. A moss keeper knows water has a voice. Too much, and it splashes like gossip. Too little, and it sighs like withheld confession. This morning, it purrs. Just right. You rise and walk the narrow gravel path that threads the center of the plot, your sandals whispering. You have learned to read this moss the way sailors read currents and merchants read coin weight. Its height, its curl at the edges, its willingness to darken when damp. All of these form a kind of scripture you have devoted years to memorizing. You pause beside the old stone basin where threads of emerald velvet creep up its legs. Yesterday you brushed them back so they wouldn't choke the carved dragon motif, but overnight they have returned with shy insistence. You smile. Persistence deserves acknowledgement. You lift them gently, realigning their direction, not suppressing them, but reminding them of boundaries. By mid-morning, a faint breeze passes through the garden, a sign the neighbors will soon begin sweeping their yards. You don't look up from your work when you hear the soft creak of a gate. It is the senior keeper visiting, as he sometimes does, though never to speak more than a handful of syllables. He studies the moss beds with eyes much older than you, yet sharper than the rake he carries. You feel his presence like a shadow of approval, or perhaps a test. Without pausing your careful pinching of a yellowed tuft, you ask the garden internally whether it prefers silence or instruction. It answers with stillness, so you say nothing. When he finally speaks, it is a single question. You notice the dryness. You nod. He grunts, which for him is a sermon. Then he crouches, rare given his age, and touches the very same patch you tended first. His fingertip hovers not over the dryness, but the softness you restored. He nods once and straightens. His approval lands on you like the faint warmth of a winter sun, subtle, but strong enough to sustain another day of patience. After he leaves, you continue. You pluck an intrusive sprig of wild grass that has dared to rise where it shouldn't, its audacity almost admirable. You tease out a few grains of wind-blown sand from the root beds. You pat the moss back into its cushioned shape, adjusting tiny landscapes only you seem to notice. Hours pass, as though time itself is kneeling beside you, learning what waiting means. By afternoon, you feel the small triumphs of the day accumulating behind you like invisible trophies. A repaired patch here, a revived color there, averted dryness, balanced moisture, patient renewal. You pause, resting your hands on your thighs, and watch as the light angles low and gold. The garden glows, not from anything you added, but from everything you prevented. And in that glow, you understand again why moss keepers age slowly. The garden portion of your soul grows greener with each hour you surrender to its quiet rhythm. Evening approaches like ink poured gently over the rim of the sky, and you remain crouched in the familiar ache of devotion. The garden cools beneath your palms, trading its daytime softness for the firmer, dusk-bound resilience that moss displays when it prepares to endure the night. You move slowly now, knowing the light is thinning. Mistakes made in this hour linger until morning. The moss seems aware of your caution, its tiny fronds holding still as though waiting for your hands to speak first. You begin your final round of the day, the night readiness walk. Every keeper conducts it differently, but you have shaped yours into a ritual so steady it feels like breath. First, you circle the western mound, ensuring the drainage slope remains unblocked. A single pebble out of place could funnel water where it doesn't belong when the midnight fog arrives. Tonight, you find such a stone, small, shy, barely noticeable, yet you lift it as though removing a threat from a cradle. You place it aside and smooth the path it disrupted. The moss settles back into uniformity, relieved. The second stage of your walk brings you to the shaded bend behind the stone lantern. This corner always darkens first, always cools fastest. You learned long ago that moss here sleeps deeply, too deeply sometimes. Moisture lingers like a heavy dream, inviting rot if left to brood. You press 2 fingers lightly against the patch. It's cool, yes, but not wet. Balanced. Ready. You whisper a quiet thanks. The lantern, unlit, stands as your mute witness. You straighten your back slowly, feeling vertebrae slide into alignment with a soft series of clicks. The sky above has deepened to cobalt. A few early stars appear. You know what comes next, the counting. Not of stars, but of breaths. 6 slow inhales as you cross the east edge.
8 more as you turn along the northern strip. This is how you keep your focus as dusk becomes night. Breath as metronome, movement as prayer. Your grandmother taught you this. She said a keeper who rushes at sunset invites chaos by sunrise. And as you complete the 9th breath, a thin flutter of movement catches your ear. A sparrow, foolishly late, hops between stepping stones, searching for leftover seed. You shoo it gently. Moss is vulnerable during this hour, its moisture rising, its softness exposed, and the tiny claws of a frantic bird could undo hours of your quiet work. The sparrow scurries, offended, but you sense its small understanding before it disappears beyond the fence. At last, you reach the heart of the garden, the central mound where the oldest patch of moss lives. This is the first bed you ever tended, the one that taught you the cost of haste. You kneel before it as though greeting an elder. The mound is almost black in this light, luminous only at its crown, where the last fingers of days still cling. You touch the crown with the back of your hand, a gesture of respect older than any written record. The temperature is perfect, the moisture perfect, the texture without flaw. The mound accepts the coming night with the serenity of something fully prepared. You sit back on your heels, letting the moment lengthen. A faint breeze stirs the hem of your sleeve. The garden exhales. Its patience settles over you like a quilt. You understand, as you do each night, that your work is less about tending moss and more about tending the part of yourself that knows how to wait, soften, and endure. In this realization, darkness completes its descent, wrapping the garden in velvet shadow. You rise, bow slightly, and step backward toward the gate, not turning your back until the moss itself has fully disappeared into night. And as you close the wooden gate behind you, you carry with you the day's final truth, that moss keeping is not a task, but a companionship, one that moves with you even after the garden is out of sight, whispering its slow lessons into every hour that follows.